What gets me right away is this ugly little truth hanging over everything. Isaiah is the one paying the price, while Curtis keeps acting like he can spin the whole mess into something cleaner than it is. And I just cannot sit with that. Not when Isaiah is injured, not when a major surgery in his career is suddenly off the table, and not when we are all supposed to pretend this is some tragic accident that landed out of nowhere. It does not land that way to me. It feels planted. It feels messy on purpose. It feels like someone made a choice and now everybody else is scrambling to bury the shape of it. And the wild part is Jordan is somehow getting dragged into the fire too, not because Jordan hit Isaiah, but because Jordan started bending the truth. That is where this starts to feel even more twisted. We know Jordan got distracted while driving. We know there was laughter, that weird flirty blur of a moment, that kiss from Curtis right when Jordan should have been fully locked into the road. And that is the part I keep coming back to. Not because I want to pile on Jordan, but because it matters. It matters a lot. Jordan was not just some random witness in this. Jordan was part of the chain reaction. 1 second of lost focus, one wrong emotional beat, and everything slid off the edge. But Curtis did not just let that happen. Curtis seemed to grab that chaos and shape it into a shield. That is the part that makes my skin crawl a little. Because it is one thing to be guilty and frightened. It is another thing entirely to be guilty and then start shopping around for somebody else to carry the blame. And Curtis has that pattern. At least that is how it looks to me. I cannot shake the feeling that he has never really met a fault he wanted to sit inside and own. Not in love, not in marriage, not in the way he moves through this town like consequences are for other people. If you ask me, that is the real disease here. Not just one bad decision, but this whole reflex to protect the self by crushing the truth. Curtis seems like the kind of man who would rather rewrite the story than admit he was wrong in it. And once a person starts doing that, it spreads, it touches everything. Suddenly, Isaiah is not just injured. Isaiah becomes a target. Suddenly, the accident is not just an accident. It becomes a weapon. Suddenly, Jordan is not just shaken and guilty. Jordan becomes useful. That is the ugly little machine turning underneath all this, and I do not trust it one bit. I keep thinking about that memory card, too. That could be the thing that cracks this whole shell open. If the police recover it, there is a chance they will see what actually happened before the crash. Jordan losing concentration. Curtis leaning in. That tiny sequence of distraction, temptation, confusion, and disaster. It may not look dramatic on the surface, but those are the kinds of details that ruin carefully built lies. And maybe that is why this still feels unresolved to me. Because the truth is probably already sitting there in fragments, waiting for someone brave enough or nosy enough to pull it into daylight. And then there is the part that makes this even harder to swallow. Curtis did not just injure Isaiah. At least that is how it seems to me based on the way this whole thing keeps unfolding. Curtis also seems tied to the way Isaiah was blamed. That is a double hit, maybe even a triple one, if Jordan keeps getting pushed deeper into the same wreckage. I mean, think about what that means. Isaiah loses the surgery. Isaiah's patients lose their chance. Isaiah's career takes a hit. And all of that gets wrapped up in somebody else's emotional mess. Somebody else's need to dodge responsibility. That is not just unfair. That is rotten. And Jordan, even here, feels like the saddest part of the whole story to me. Because I do not think Jordan walked into this with some grand plan. I think Jordan got swept up. I think Jordan knew guilt was sitting there from the start. Jordan even blamed Jordan, at least inwardly. And that detail matters to me. It shows Jordan was not completely detached from the harm. But then Curtis steps in and starts nudging the guilt sideways, trying to convince Jordan that somebody else has to take the fall. That is where things get morally slippery. Not because Jordan is innocent, but because Jordan starts cooperating with the wrong story. And once that happens, the lie gains weight. I can almost hear the logic Curtis uses in his own head. If the blame can be moved, then the pain can be managed. If the blame can be moved, then maybe the consequences get blurred. But the truth does not blur that easily. Not completely. Not when Isaiah is the one bleeding from it. Not when Curtis is the one who made it personal. And not when Jordan knew enough to understand what Curtis was really doing. That is the part that keeps bothering me. Jordan may not have struck Isaiah, but Jordan knew Curtis wanted to weaponize the accident because Isaiah had gotten too close to Portia. That detail changes the temperature of everything. It means this was not just panic. It was retaliation dressed up as confusion. And honestly, that is why I cannot give Curtis any grace here. He was not just self-protective. He was opportunistic. He saw a vulnerable moment and tried to turn it into a weapon against Isaiah. That is where the selfishness comes in. Not just in the injury itself, but in the way Curtis seems completely incapable of imagining anyone else's pain as real unless it is happening to him. He can feel his own suffering, his own humiliation, his own fear. Fine. But everybody else, they become background noise. I know people like that, or at least I know the type, and they are exhausting in the worst way. And there is another layer that could really matter if the police actually start connecting all of this. If they can prove that Jordan would still have been badly hurt, even if help had arrived in time, then the whole chain of blame starts shifting again. That is where Curtis may think he is safe, but I do not think he is as safe as he believes. Because if the truth is that Jordan's injury was severe no matter what, then Curtis loses one more piece of the story he has been leaning on. He cannot say with any honesty that he was protecting Jordan by twisting the narrative. He was protecting himself. That is all. And that distinction is everything. Valentine and Carly showing up in time also keeps echoing in my head. Because without them, this might have ended in death, not just injury. Jordan could have died in that car. Maybe that is too stark, but I do not think it is too far off. And if Curtis knows that, really knows it, then how does he justify any of this to himself? How does he keep looking at Isaiah like the villain? How does he keep acting like the injury, the surgery, the ruined reputations, all of it are someone else's burden? I do not get that kind of mental gymnastics. I really do not. To me, it looks less like denial and more like cowardice, wearing a clean shirt. What makes Valentine interesting in all this is that he may be the one person standing close enough to the truth to actually do something with it. If he knows Curtis pinned this on Isaiah, and if he ends up getting exposed as a fugitive, then maybe he does the one decent thing left to him and tells the truth before he gets dragged away. I keep wondering if that is where this is headed. Because Valentine does not strike me as someone who would be comfortable watching a good man take the fall for somebody else's revenge stunt. He might be a criminal in the eyes of the law, sure, but that does not automatically make him blind. Sometimes people on the edges see the center more clearly than the people standing inside it. And maybe that is the real pressure point here. Maybe Valentine realizes Curtis is not grateful, not remorseful, not even remotely ashamed of how much damage he caused. Maybe Valentine starts seeing that he rescued the wrong man. That would be a brutal realization. Not because Curtis deserves compassion, but because it forces the whole scene to reframe itself. The rescuer becomes the witness. The witness becomes the threat. The injured man becomes the one everyone should have been protecting from the beginning. And Curtis becomes exactly what I keep suspecting he is, a man who would rather drag everybody down than stand in the light of what he did. I could be wrong, but I keep circling back to this thought anyway. The truth here is not just about a crash or a fight or a delayed surgery. The truth is about character. Who tells the truth when it costs something, Who hides when it matters most? Who turns guilt into a weapon? Who remembers the injured person as a human being, not an inconvenience? And right now, Curtis is failing that test in almost every direction. So where does that leave us? With Isaiah hurt, Jordan compromised, Curtis cornered, and Valentine maybe holding the one piece that can blow the whole thing open. But even then, I am not sure the damage is done being done. Maybe that is what unsettles me most. The lie may still be moving. The blame may still be shifting. And the question I cannot quite shake is this. When the truth finally surfaces, will Curtis actually face it, or will he find one more person to sacrifice first?
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.